Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up all the books that I read in July, and I'm happy to say that all the readathons I participated in July really helped boost my reading and break me out of the slump that I've been in kind of on and off throughout the year. So we'll start with a couple of things that I read for Summerween, and then I'll move on to Tarot Readathon. I think that's the easiest way to kind of break things up. So for Summerween, I ended up reading, first of all, Night of the Mannequins by Stephen Graham Jones. I read this one for the Summer Vibes prompt, I think, and I ended up really enjoying this. I think I didn't love this as much as I loved some of his other work, and I kind of learned through this month, I'll kind of come back to this, but I learned through this month that I think I like his longer works better, but I did really enjoy this, or following, I can't remember his name, Sawyer. We're following Sawyer in this one, and he and his friends decide to play prank on another one of their friends by pulling out this mannequin that they used to play with, like, right at the start of their high school career. And now the group of them are about to go into their senior year. They pull out this mannequin for one more prank, and things go horribly wrong, and Sawyer is increasingly convinced that they're being targeted by the mannequin, that it is killing them. So this goes in directions that I was definitely not expecting. It doesn't go the way you may think based on that premise. I'm going to stop shaking the book now. I've just noticed that I'm doing that. I don't think this goes in quite the direction you think based on that premise, and I found that really interesting. I also think that Sawyer's a really interesting character to kind of be in the head of. He's got some interesting perspectives on the world and on kind of the events that are happening. So overall, I really enjoyed this. I think it's really unsettling. In fact, I think it's maybe the most unsettling book I've read from Stephen Graham Jones so far, just because of what's happening and the person we're reading it from. But I think I also wanted a little more depth in its discussion of why what was happening, because there is kind of a discussion of like mental health in here that I think it's brought up, but it doesn't get explored in as deep or as thorough a way as I would have liked given the events of the story. So yeah, I think it's good. It just needed a little more depth, which is why I think I like his longer work better, because this is so short. It just didn't have enough space to dig into that topic as much as I would have liked. The other book I read for Summerween was The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, which I read for like 5+ words in the title, I think was the prompt. This one I previously started for a project a few years ago that I ended up scrapping for various reasons. So it was kind of a reread for like half of it, and then the latter half was new to me. And I think that I liked... Did I like the latter half better? No, I didn't. I think overall, this is a really solid story. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars, and now I'm finding that it's a little bit forgettable. There's certain specific scenes that stick in my head, and I remember like the resolution, how everything kind of wrapped up, but I think there's like a lot of characters to keep track of, and I think you would probably get more out of this if you are like a really big horror movie fan, especially classic horror movies, because all of the characters in this, in the Final Girl Support Group, the titular group, are basically parodies of people or like final girls from actual movies. So I was able to recognize most of them, but I feel like a lot of their personalities and a lot of kind of what was happening around them was based in whatever movie they were inspired by, and there were parts of it that I just didn't totally get because I wasn't familiar with the movies that it was talking about. So I didn't have that kind of context for it, so I think that would help. I think this is definitely readable without that context, but I think it would help for kind of understanding what's going on. I do really enjoy Lynette, the main character of this, the way that she is approaching things. You kind of get why she's doing what she's doing, and even as she's making like horrible decisions, you understand why she's doing that, like the thought process that has led her to make that decision. I do just think that parts of this are a little forgettable. There's too many characters to keep track of, and some of them don't really play much of a part in the story at all. They just kind of are there in the background. So I wanted, I think, more exploration of those kind of side characters because they were interesting, but it felt like there were a lot of characters that got kind of sidelined. I did really like the resolution of this. I like the reveal for like who the bad guy is, who's targeting them, and kind of the reasons for it, because it added like a layer of realism that I wasn't expecting for this, because a lot of stuff in here is just not very realistic. It's just like, that's not how any of that works. But I think that the resolution for this had some realism to it that I appreciated, and I think overall it wraps up with like a very hopeful tone, and a kind of tone of like, forgiveness and healing that I thought was interesting, given everything these characters go through. So I feel like this was kind of a mixed bag for me, where parts of it just didn't really stick with me, but other parts of it I think were really interesting and brought up some interesting conversations as well around like, what would this kind of experience do to someone and how do we treat others who have been through horrible things. I thought that was really interesting. So then returning to Tarot Readathon, I ended up reading 5 books for that. Let's see if I can do math. I think it's 5. Correct. It's been a long day. And I actually read these 2 before Summerween. But kind of coming back to that point about Stephen Graham Jones, and I threw it into the floor, bear with me. Take 2 on that. Coming back to Stephen Graham Jones and my feeling that I generally like his longer work better. I really enjoyed Mapping the Interior. I think I also gave this one 4 stars, and it was kind of the same thing for me, where I wanted just a little more depth, although I think I got more out of this one maybe than Night of the Mannequins. This one is got a lot of like emotional horror. This is about a young boy basically trying to come to grips, I think, with, or come to terms with, get to grips with, that's what I was trying to come up with, his grief over his father's death. This is a young boy who's basically lived a significant portion of his life without his father, and he believes he starts seeing his father's ghost in the house that he has moved into with his mother and his younger brother. And it's about kind of the difficulties of their lives, but also the ways that this boy is just kind of trying to grapple with the grief that he feels and the loss that he feels, and the kind of person that his dad was and wasn't. So I think this is really interesting. I think the ending comes a little bit out of left field. I was a little confused when I got to the ending, although I do really like the ending and where it leaves off. I think I was just a little confused about how we got there from the earlier events of the story, which I think that might be a me thing. I think that's a case of me needing to reread this at some point to get more out of it, because I think some things just kind of went over my head. But overall, I found this one very unsettling as well, and creepy, and I think that the main character is really interesting. I think is his name Junior? I think it's Junior. Just like the exploration of his emotional journey as he is going through all of these things with his mother and his little brother, and his kind of changing feelings about his father was just really engaging, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I would read like a longer story of this. I think that was kind of my takeaway from both of these, was just that for this one and Out of the Mannequins, I really enjoyed what it was doing. I would have liked to see more of it. So then I read Murder in the Family by Kara Hunter, I'm not sure on that one, but this was really fun. This is a mixed media whodunit, where it's set up like a true crime series, like you're watching a TV show, and each section is basically like a transcript of one episode of the show, which I really liked that format. It had this kind of mix of mixed media, but without being like a bunch of random types of media. There was a very definite structure to it, where you get kind of like the pre-filming information, you get like the transcript itself, and then you also get like social reactions to each episode and the kind of theorizing that's going on like on social media around it. So I thought that was just a really interesting structure. I really enjoyed it. I personally love those kind of like true crime TV shows that are really about like the investigations themselves, like how did police investigate this, how did they solve the crime, and in this case, how are they going to solve the crime. There's also some really good reveals here that I think are built up really well. Like there's a groundwork laid where you can absolutely guess some of the twists, and it's still like really exciting and fun when those twists are revealed, and the ways that like all of the characters are tied into the central mystery of it all was just really fun. I had a great time with this. It was one that I just could not put down. I just kept picking it up and reading it, which was hard because I was working on a writing assignment for an interview at the time, and I just kept having to like pick this up and read a few more pages. So I actually just tore through this. I think I read most of it in a single day, and I would highly recommend this if you like mixed media mystery at all. Then I read The Mystery at Dunvegan Castle by Teal Hoochoo, which is the 3rd book in the Edinburgh Nights trilogy. I say trilogy. Edinburgh Nights series. There's a 4th book coming out in November, I think. Really love this series. This is following Ropa, who's a ghost talker, and she is supporting her grandmother and her little sister, and she gets involved with magical society in Edinburgh, And it just gets drawn into all these different kinds of mysteries, and I really enjoyed this one. This one is far more political than the first two, and I think even more so than the first two makes clear that there is something bigger going on that Ropa is kind of unaware of. There's these bigger threads being pulled on across magical society, and Ropa is just kind of now starting to really see how those are fitting together, but also seeing the ways that things are kind of unraveling around her as well. So I just really enjoyed that. I liked the political aspect. I liked the cast of characters in here. There were a couple of characters I would have liked to see more of, because again, we had a case of like some interesting characters being introduced and then suddenly kind of pushed to the side and only popping up when they were convenient. So I really would have liked to know more about like the Grand Terra and his translator. His name is escaping me. There were a lot of names in this one, so some of the names are escaping me. There's also a English sorcerer for the first time in one of these, and no, I take that back, not the first time. But there's like a major kind of political figure from England in this one, and I just was really enjoying the like different political dynamics that were being set up and the ways that Ropa had to grapple with that, because it was very clear that she was being asked to play a game that she did not know the rules for, and seeing her kind of stumbling through that and trying to rely on the help of her friends. This book also has her kind of relying on herself more than in previous books, because she kind of, for plot-related reasons, loses to some extent access to her mentor, so where he has kind of guided her through some of the political stuff and kind of shielded her from those instances where like the fallout could harm her, she doesn't have that luxury in this book. He is kind of out of commission for a while, and so she's having to really, you know, leap into the fire on this one and just deal with things on her own, or with the help of Priya and Jomo, which I thought was really fun. I liked seeing Ropa grapple with that. This also has some interesting elements of mental health and kind of explores the effect of what's been going on in the previous two books on Ropa, the ways that that has in some ways traumatized her, but also altered the way that she interacts with other people, altered the way that she kind of like lives her life. Really enjoyed that aspect of this as well. So really solid mystery too. I really liked the way that this one wrapped up. It's got a nice twist at the end. There was like one of those where you kind of see it coming and you're like, oh no, and then it happens and it just like completely alters the status quo of the story, and I just really enjoyed that. So overall, loved this. I think I gave it 4.5 stars just because I wanted to see a little bit more of those side characters, and I'm very excited for book 4 coming out later this year. Then I went for something lighter and read The Black Cauldron by Lloyd Alexander. This is the second book in the Chronicles of Predain series, which is a children's fantasy series from like the 60s. I read this book actually when I was a child and had not read it since then. So this was fun for me, kind of coming back and remembering why this book made Tiny Hope cry, because I remember almost nothing about this book, or rather I remembered nothing about this book except the fact that it made me cry. And there was a very specific character death that made Tiny Hope very, very sad. So I got to reread it. Really enjoyed that experience. I think it's very standard children's fantasy, but it does a fairly good job of making some of its characters and their motivations a little more complex than just kind of a standard good versus evil story. You have some people who are bad who do some good things. You have people who are good who do some bad things. And I think it does a good job of kind of towing that line and offering some more complexity to a good versus evil story. I really like the way that the friend group works together in here, and that character death was still sad, although I didn't realize quite how quickly that character dies after an ominous foretelling of his death. It just happens like very suddenly. And I didn't remember it being like that early in the book, but it was much earlier than I anticipated, and things really kind of shift and go in new directions after that point. So I really enjoyed this. It was a fun reread, and I'm looking forward to finally reading the rest of the series, because I did not know until I was an adult that this was even a part of a series. So now I'm able to continue on to book 3. And finally, I read The Trap by Catherine Ryan Howard, which I really enjoyed. This one is a thriller set in Dublin following 2 women investigating a missing persons case for different reasons. And we also have a POV in here from the abductor who has been taking these women, and he is like talking to someone who is currently in his car. So I really enjoyed this. I liked the different characters and their different motivations. I think I had a similar feeling to this one though as I did about some of Stephen Graham Jones' short stuff, was that I wanted more of this. I think it was a little bit underdeveloped. Some parts of it felt a little bit disjointed because it felt like we were just jumping between scenes without clear reasons for those jumps. And there were characters that, because they were interacting with a different POV character, were just like a completely different personality, which I'm sure is a reality for some people, like code switching is a thing, but it felt like we were given a character who was like very normal seeming, and then the next moment we're being shown that they're like super suspicious and creepy and weird, and it was just like a little bit unbelievable in that sudden shift. So I think parts of this were a little disjointed, but I did really like both Lucy and Angela, who are our kind of main characters. Lucy is the sister of one of the missing women, and Angela is a civilian staff member of the missing persons unit, but she wants to be a detective. And I enjoyed the different reasons that they got involved, the ways that those motivations influenced the way that they engaged with the investigation itself. And then the abductor POV sections were just super creepy. I thought those were really well done and really unsettling because the abductor is so calm about what he's doing, and he has such like a considered story about why he's doing what he's doing that it was just like super unsettling. I also love the twist at the end of this. There's just a couple of fantastic twists right near the end that completely alter the way that I think the whole story reads, and I really enjoyed that. I thought those were super well done and really shocking, and just I had a great time with this one. I think I gave it 4 stars. I don't remember if I've given star ratings for most of these, but they're on Goodreads. You can check that out if you want to. Overall, would highly recommend this. I just think it's a little bit disjointed and need a little bit more length to be fully developed. So those are all the books I read in July. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite book you read in July was, or your least favorite. Whichever one you feel more strongly about. I would love to know what you guys have been reading, and I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, I hope you consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.